Welcome back, MTG Joe here. We're here for our first weekly meta breakdown for the new Thunder Junction standard season. We'll be covering every format on Arena as soon as the data allows us to, so usually it's a couple days. I am going to preface and caution folks, it's like a day and a half. This video is less going to be like this format solved, best deck, stuff like that, but it's more to kind of highlight what people are trying out in the first few days, as well as providing stats in terms of what's winning and what's not. You always have to be cautious. Like, I'm a content creator myself. I try to walk that line with having stats, but people are going to embellish. This needs to be banned, this 100% win rate, never lost, but they cut videos. So I want to be cautious, especially with people with wildcards. The economy is really shitty right now in Arena, with so many mythics being like impossible to get from the big score that are standard legal. They're like 0.5% or some minuscule percent of actually opening in store packs if you don't draft. So this is really to kind of preface and help people kind of see what's working, what's not, and kind of going from there. So we're going to get the data from Untapped. There is a couple MTGO leagues. There's not a huge variety there. And I've started with at least the videos, like the decks that have been doing pretty well. I've tried to put out some videos to demonstrate them as well, so you'll see them on the channel as well. If you just want to get a feel to see how the deck plays out, if it's something of interest before you kind of use your resources to build out the decks. As much as possible, try to be transparent about the win rates so folks can make informed decisions how they want to spend. But like I said, we're getting the data from Untapped. You'll see on the screen, it's a companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client, aggregates win rates, gives us a whole bunch of cool stats. They recently added in a mythic player kind of ranking, so not necessarily like first, second, third, fourth, but latest mythic players, and we can also see what their win rates are with specific decks. So this is something that's just got a couple days worth of data, but we'll start looking at this and seeing like if we can find any unique decks and stuff like that. So I'm going to incorporate it going forward into a lot of the stats as well. If you want to use Untapped, have your stuff, especially if you're killing it on Mythic, link is in the video description to sign up. I'll paste all the deck lists as well, timestamp it, so you're good there. Before we jump into the stats, do want to just remind folks, we do this for every format. We do it for best of one, we do it for best of three. If you do enjoy this type of content, subscribing to the channel is the easiest way to help support. It's free. You'll see the ticker at the top right-hand corner. We're closing in on 12,200, and then we're trying to hit 15,000 by June. Been kind of a shitty month in terms of like Magic stats, all things considered. I usually average like 400 to 500 subs a month. I'm at like 100. Views have been down. So I don't know if it's just like natural cycle of things, or I just fell out of favor with the algorithm, but it would be appreciative if you can. Likes and comments also go a long way as well. So don't usually like doing that like heavy pandering, but it's just kind of a weird state with Magic right now, and it's hard to be motivated to produce content when like you're getting no views, but just kind of putting that out there. But let's jump into it. So popularity of the day. These are just things you'll see most often. We're still getting to find like what the archetypes are, so I'm not going to go too deep into it because it's mostly just colors right now. The archetypes are still shaping up, but like mono red Boros kind of decks towards the top. Because it's still early days, we're just looking at whatever data we have. I literally have like a day and a half of data, so 110,000 games from bronze to mythic, standard, best of one. I will say all the decks that were good before, like the Boros Convokes, the mono reds, the Temur ramps, they're all still putting up stats. I'm going to focus on just new archetypes that people are trying out and stuff like that. So one of the most promising cards from the set that's hitting a bunch of different formats is Slickshot Show Off. So this is my favorite card of the set. I can't stop playing this card in various shells. So this is a card we're going to see time and time again through a bunch of these different decks as people try to find the best shell. So this one here is a Temur variant, 55% win rate, reasonable sample size, 470 games. And what you're trying to do is just play a bunch of cheap prowess creatures. You have Swiss Spear, Slickshot, Fugitive Codebreaker, all in here, a couple elusive otters. And then what you are trying to do is basically just play a bunch of pump spells or just like cantrip style effects. Giant Growth gets them bigger, Anger gives trample, Monstrous Rage gives trample. You can double strike them with Twinferno as well. Biggest thing with this deck is we got access to Spiral Bluff Canal, which helps the mana as well. Though I have a video that just dropped this morning about a Boros version, with Angel Fire Ignition that we'll cover later in the video. I think that one's promising as well. Like, it played better than the stats would kind of indicate. So mono black, we are at 55%, almost 1,000 games played. So this version here is kind of leveraging the Tiny Bones joins up with a skeleton legendary kind of sub-theme. So you have basically whenever so enters the battlefield, opponent discards card. Then whenever legendary creature enters battlefield, your opponent mills a card and loses a life. Notably, this triggers a crime, which you have stuff like Gisa the Hellraiser that gets you zombies whenever you trigger a crime. So Gisa comes in, the Tiny Bones triggers Gisa, which then gives you some zombie tokens as well. This is also a lord for your skeletons. You have Tiny Bones, which can then also trigger crimes by eating away at your opponent's graveyard. Cult Conscript, Forsaken Miner. So 1 mana, 2 power creatures is nothing to necessarily laugh at. You have Case of the Stashed Skeleton, which gives you another skeleton and then can be used as like a demonic tutor. Corpse of the Lost, 3 mana Anthem for your skeletons and then gives them haste. And then you also get a skeleton. And then if you descend, you get some value there too. So kind of just skeleton aggro, beating in with that. You have a new Sandstorm Verge. This one will allow you to kind of get around a creature from an unblockable perspective. Given that this is somewhat of an aggressive deck, I don't necessarily like Field of Ruin in this shell. If you're taking time off in your aggro deck or like creature heavy deck to blow up a land, it's probably not where you want to be. I would probably just play like a Myrex or Mishra's Foundry instead. Just be more proactive with your deck. You then go to Gruul Picnic Ruiner. That's replaced the Picnic Ruiner with the Slick Shots. I will say this should be a 4 of. This is the best card in the deck. So kind of play with those in there. Similar concepts to what we kind of highlighted, but this one you're using Great Train Heist. So this completely blew me out in draft. So you get an additional combat for 4 mana, and then at instant speed, which is kind of sweet. For an additional 2, your creatures get +1/0 and first strike, and then for just 2 mana, if you want to cast it, whenever your creatures deal combat damage, you get to create a tapped treasure token. So kind of combo kill with extra turns, with extra combats, and then you also have Trash the Town. So I think just playing like the normal Picnic Ruiner style stuff, the Audacities, stuff like that would be better than this, because this is quite mana intensive. This deck's also only playing 20 lands, so to get the value out of this, you need 4 mana, because you want to put the counters ideally and give trample. And if you're just playing this for trample, paying 2 mana versus Audacity, which gives a power boost for 1 and gets you a card draw, I think it's better overall in that approach. So just little nuance things with that. So now we're going to the stuff that people are playing a lot of, but not showing up in terms of results. So we have the Dimir deck. So this looks like the combo deck, 740,000 games played, 51%. So how the combo works, you have Bloodletter of Alkazats. Play this on 4, then you play Rush of Dead on 5. So 3 mana plus the 2, target opponent loses half their life. With the Bloodletter, they lose the other half of their life. So they basically, you one-shot them with that. You also have the Mindlink Mech Bloodletter combo, so you can attack, basically play the Mech on 3, play Bloodletter, you make it a copy, you attack in, and then they take a huge chunk of damage. Paired with that, you have things like Deep Cavern Bat, Duelist of the Mind, a new Nathan Stoyer kind of World's rendition card. When you do crimes, you get to draw a discard kind of effects. Gix draws you some cards as well. You got a Tiny Bones in there. The thing is, these like mid-rangey decks tend to not be as good in best of 1. Now you do have like 8 pieces of removal, 11, so you can deal okay with the aggressive decks, but it may be just a little too slow and clunky to kind of pair off. Then go to Izzet Tempo. So this is a list we actually played in best of 3. This list is from Crokies. We played a modified version, slight differences. I would say if you want to play this in best of 1, the biggest suggestion I would have is get rid of the slick sequencing and play Lightning Strike. So I cut the 3 steps ahead and I cut the slick sequence and just play Lightning Strike. The big thing is you want to have 3 damage in a lot of cases, whether it be pump on like some of the prowess creatures. Everything out of the Temur ramp deck that you want to kill creature-wise is 3 toughness. I think that's an important avenue to kind of attack your opponent with that way there. Similarly, like this is okay versus Convoke. If you're running into a lot of Convoke and the small stuff, it's pretty good. It's pretty easy to flip, but you do want 3 damage as much as possible. So I don't think this deck's as good in this configuration for best of 1. I think if you make those changes, but I have a video where we were beating up in best of 3. Like we lost a close one. Forget against what, but you just play like Urbrask Forge on the side. Like that was a switch I made from Kroki's list just to help you grind out, and then you can just flyers go over a lot of the Convoke stuff, and then you just do huge damage. Like playing Demonic Ruckus, you plot Slickshot, and then you just play a bunch of cards, put counters on it with like Proph's Edict. Is pretty sweet, all things considered. You have 8 cantrips, so you can just keep churning through your deck. Boros, this is Boros Angels. So I actually ran into this in best of 3 against an opponent. The deck was pretty slick, all things considered. The one thing that they were playing as well was Archangel of Tithes. So you may want to trim on like the Aurelias to play Archangel of Tithes. But core of the deck, you have like Giada to kind of ramp you into various angels. Steel Seraph's another 3-drop. A lot of ways to kind of gain life with the deck. Just evasive creatures. You're playing Lightning Helix and Lightning Strike. So 8 2-mana removal spells that can also go face, so some flexibility there. So you can be aggressive, you can be controlling, all things considered. 1 copy of Invasion main. I think in best of 1, you don't want Invasion. I would play like Get Lost or Elspeth Smite, just something like maybe 1 mana to kind of help you play a little bit faster on curve, because you'll win the late game against a lot of the creature battles, but you're a little slow just getting the ball rolling. But this was one that caught me a little off guard when we were playing against it. Then we go to Golgari Legends, 47%. So again, these are like decks people are trying out. It's more to kind of show what's working, what's not. But we have Vraska joins up. Whenever a legendary creature you control deals combat damage, you draw a card, so it's kind of an engine of the deck. Similarly with Tiny Bones in here, you have the Tiny Bones itself, you have Bristly Bill. Whenever you put a land, like whenever land goes into play, you get to put a counter on one of your creatures, so it's kind of a way to kind of power up like that. Vadmir, like to me this card would be great if it wasn't legendary. Like this, nothing about this card seems legendary, it just feels like they forced it to be legendary. But if like that mono black aggro skeleton deck with just some of these in there just to keep getting bigger seems great, but drawing multiple of your 2-drops that you can't play seems a little awkward, and I think that's part of the issue with this deck. Sometimes when you see these legend decks like the Esper one, what makes it functional is you have Rafine to get rid of extra copies, and you have like Denick that you could mill over, and then you get that value by casting its backside. Here you could just draw like 3 Glissas, and then what are you going to do? Or like 3 Gix. It makes it a little awkward, but you got like Gikrog in here, Gissa, kind of all mixed into that. Another thing here, they are not playing the Golgari fast line, which they should. We got Blooming Martian here, so that's just another dual line that they should be playing in this deck. So kind of going to the deck that I was mentioning earlier. So I should have been 4-1. I completely punted a game. Just my brain stopped working. I thought Homestead Courage, for whatever reason, was Connive, not Flashback. I forgot what Flashback did in a game. I had Lethal if I just played my cards. The only loss we would have had then would be to the like Slick Shot Mirror, and they were on the play. Basically, they had the 1 extra combat step that made the difference. But you have Lawrence Escape to protect your stuff, Skrelf to protect yourself, Cacophony Scamp as another creature, Illuminator Virtuoso or Slick Shot, or give you 2 kind of abilities to almost like turn 3 kill your opponent most of the time. Virtuoso with the double strike, Slit Shot with a whole bunch of power, and the big card here is Angel Fire Ignition. A lot of these mirrors just lets you go offense defense, gives you life to help the race. Indestructible is huge. It gives you 2 hits at the spell itself. So I just dropped this video. This deck's really fun. So this was from one of my viewers. They played 3 events and they got 7 wins in the best of 1 events throughout all 3. So it's something they've been working on. I know some other folks have been trying it out in best of 3 as well, so I'll try to get those lists as well once they kind of finalize and see what's working for them. But this deck puts out a lot of pressure very quick. The one thing, if you are going to be playing this, prioritize protection spells, or prioritize being able to protect your creature. So don't just, like at times you're not just going to want to jam your creature. Like you'll do the Swift Spear out on one a lot of times, but if you can, especially if you have a Lawrence Escape in hand, play out like either the Virtuoso or plot the Slick Shot and then play it when you can hold up the Lawrence Escape. You'll win more games. Just having that creature out is very important, and that's what you want to kind of keep around. So then just kind of go into standard. These are best of 3 decks, but you can kind of get a feel. I just want to give some stats or like some ideas. So this one 5-0 by Wappa. We actually played this as well on the channel. It is a 5-color Legends deck with Annie joins up to double legendary triggers. So it's the shell that was the Slogurk kind of mill deck with a bunch of legendary lands. We have Rona, so you could get 2 untapped triggers with Annie. Annie also is really nice at just blowing up a Shieldred from your opponent's side. We have Tiny Bones in here. Honest Retstein's really sick in this list, especially with won't pull up. So with Annie, you get to basically raise dead 2 creatures to hand, and then you get your creatures cost less, so it lets you kind of combo. This version's got Bonnie Paul in there. Another card I wanted to try out here was Annie itself, just because you could reanimate cards, and then when you tap, you get to exile cards. And you're able to get around the tap with Relic of Legends that lets you tap your creature, so then you can provide some card advantage. This deck's hard to play. We won more games than we lost with it. I know Ali Eldrazi was playing it, he was like 13-2 with it, like pretty close to the same list in best of 3. So the deck's very strong, it takes some time to kind of learn the sequencing. And the last thing I'm just going to mention is for those Convoke players, biggest thing we're seeing Inspiring Vantage is being played 4 of, which really helps the deck. And we're seeing a couple copies of Nurturing Pixie. So 1 drop that lets you kind of rebuy one of your creatures. So anything that has like an ETB effect, Resolute Reinforcement, Sanguine Evangelist, any of your Blood Makers, you can even just rebuy your Immodane's Recruiter and then cast it again for haste, which is kind of sick. So that's something that's seeing play there. Like I said, early week. We'll come back in a couple days and I hopefully have a larger sample size, give you more kind of definitive, but wanted to just put out some stats there for the time being. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one and stay safe out there.